Taylor Draper, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yes, I'm pumped to be here.
I want to get started with your Christian journey. Where did Christianity sort of start for you?
Honestly, from the very beginning, for me, so I grew up in a Christian family, where church has been a part of every Sunday since as early as I can remember. And it was kind of embedded in everything, like from every decision and in everything that I've done after that. So I went to a private Christian school from kindergarten through 12th grade. And then out of that, I went straight into Bible college, and then straight into ministry. So it has literally been a part of every aspect of who I am since the beginning.
What Bible college did you go to?
So small one here in Kentucky called Kentucky Christian University.
Okay, cool. And for those who don't know much about Christianity, what is ministry? When you say you got into ministry, what does that mean?
So I got paid to work at a church, essentially. I got paid to be the thing that we're all supposed to be for other people.
Which is?
Just loving people, be Jesus to people.
All right. And then you got into becoming a pastor.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So I'm 33 years old. I started in ministry at 23. So for the last 10 years, I was a full-time pastor, which I got paid by a church to lead, equip, disciple, walk with other people. As far as the job itself, it is I absolutely loved being a pastor. I miss being a pastor. For me, it's converting in my head, I am still capable of being that. I just can't, I'm not being paid to do that.
Was there a moment when because your upbringing sounds similar to mine, right? You go to church on Sunday, I went to a Christian school, read the Bible, know the stories. That's not what having a relationship with Jesus is like. When did you sort of get to start to know the real Jesus, and when did your spiritual journey with Jesus start?
So it's had different layers and it's evolved. I would say my first step in that would be when I was a high school student, of understanding oh, this is my own journey. Still being so influenced by the people that, helped lead or they didn't lead me to Jesus, but helped take me closer to Jesus. Still greatly influenced by so many people and their voices and their platforms. I would say another layer took on when I had my daughter Willow. That really taught me a lot about maybe my own ability. I don't think I've ever really trusted myself with Jesus. And so I really began to understand my ability to understand who he is, and that's good, and that's a good thing, and that's holy. And yeah, then in the last 2 years, it's taken on a completely different layer of what it looks like to follow him. So
yeah, I can imagine. So you have a daughter. Were you previously married to a man?
Yes, I was married to a man for 10 years.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So right in Bible college, I followed what was communicated. I don't regret that decision in my life. I will only speak positively of my ex, because he's my child's dad. But it was that just following what is being set up and told, and what you're this is what's next. You get married out of Bible college, you go straight into ministry. I did that, and I thought I was good because I did that.
Yeah. So were you co-pastoring the church together?
No, so he was completely in his own thing. He actually is he's a filmmaker, and a TikTok influencer. So he was doing something completely different, and I was doing something completely different. So, and that's kind of our journey. We were just doing two different things And now we're still doing two different things.
All right. Well, let's get to the meat of it then. So you've as a pastor, you came out as a lesbian and you got fired from being a pastor. Explain, like, where do we start with that?
We could honestly say, and if I'm being totally honest, like I've never had that one moment where I would say like, this is my coming out moment. Like I just haven't had that. I haven't felt the need to have that. I've just kind of made decisions in my life that have clearly reflected that. I could go back and say like as early as 8 years old, I knew I had a crush on a girl. And I just kept all of those things inside me. And that was kind of my journey, is like I can go back to like different moments in middle school or high school and college, every place where like if that had been known, I would not have allowed to exist within that community because it was not acceptable. So like being in a private Christian school, being in Bible college, like if I had ever allowed myself, what my thinking was, if I had ever allowed myself to wrestle with this or to really like understand that part of myself, I would not have been able to be there. So it was just so much easier to say, nah, let's close the door on that and let's just keep doing what we're supposed to do. Like if you follow the rules, you're good.
So you were sort of suppressing your sexuality.
Absolutely.
Tell me about the moment that you came out in church.
So it was in 2021. My mental health is very much in line with just my own journey of owning a lot of things. And so my mental health had tanked. And I hit a moment where I walked into my executive pastor's office on a Thursday and said, like, for me, it was easier just to say, like, I don't want to be here because there is just too much confusion in my brain of like things that I have not been able to communicate. And so that day put me on a journey. I ended up, I stepped away for really 47 days because I stayed with her for a little bit and then they got me help. I ended up going to Florida to get help. I went to a mental health facility, a Christian mental health facility. And I remember leading up to that, one, I was so thankful for just like, one, the grace that my church that I worked for in that moment was having for me, because they really handled that moment as lovingly as they could have, because it really was. It was like, you need to go into a wrestling match with God. That's essentially what I was sent into. And I appreciated that. And I think that was the right thing to do. I don't love that I ended up losing my job because of what I decided on, but to receive permission to go into a wrestling match and for them to take care of me during that time meant a whole lot. And so, yeah, I left, and for me, my journey is a little like, it's got a lot of layers to it, in the sense that I was married to a man, and the first thing that I needed to figure out was like how to close that journey, and how my journey of being a mom is not going to stop. And then in all of that, like what has been so much for so many people has been, and then I came out publicly in that to my family, and to my family who loves Jesus, and what that's looked like. And so,
tell me about that.
Yeah, I was terrified. The only thing that I really want to like speak to on my family is that they love me. And although we don't all agree on how my life looks or the decisions that I've made, they still love me. And that has been so like evident, is they have not given up on me, and they haven't stopped loving me. And they have learned to love my partner in that. Like they have learned to love Erin and who she is, and who she is as my wife. And that's been hard on them, but they haven't stopped loving me.
Has their view, I mean, I can sort of speak to this as well. It's quite interesting with my family. Like, there's just a lot of indoctrination. Like, we were taught a specific way, like, this is right, this is wrong. And then, but when you come face to face with it and you meet a person and they're same sex attracted and they've got a partner, and it can kind of hopefully, I mean, for my family, it's sort of shifted, some of them, shifted the perspective a bit. Like, we're just human. And we're just experiencing this real human thing. It's not, it's so narrow-minded to think of it, the scripture says this, so we've got to do it this way. Would you say your experience is sort of similar?
Yeah. In one aspect, I think for me, the only way I can view that is like, we went from having conversations to like, try to, like, we've got to keep her from saying yes to this life, to I said yes to this life because it is just my life. To I now have to figure out, it's really become, it has moved from them to me of how do I include them in my journey, knowing that it hasn't been comfortable and it hasn't been easy. But if they're really not going to give up on me, and if they really do love me, then how do I now invite them into, like, here is who I am, here is what my life looks like now. And that has been challenging. And that has come with a lot of hurt on my end to them. But again, because we have just been like from the beginning, like, hey, we love you and we're not going to give up on you. That has really been the thing that has carried us through as a family, I think.
What is your experience like trying to make fellowship with other Christians while being openly a lesbian?
It's got good days and it's got bad days. I am not this, like, for me, my faith didn't end when I said, hey, I'm coming out. Like, my faith has always been a part of me. My faith is still a part of me. I still believe in the same Jesus that I believed in when I was married to a man. None of that has changed. I think I get a little defensive with that because some people want to be like, I feel like a lot of Christians within the church want to approach it that way. Like, you're just leaning into your emotions, or you're listening to your emotions, or I'm like, no.
Flesh.
Yes, the flesh. It's so much more than that. Yeah, you just don't understand. Just like I don't understand everything that comes to who you are. And I'm not trying to. I don't understand why people try to, like, that is essentially what they're communicating is like, I need to understand every aspect of you. And no, like, it's not your job. It's Jesus's job. Let him understand who I am. So I get really defensive. I think because I've worked for the church, I still love the church. And that's a complicated relationship. I really do. I still believe in the church. I don't think she is all that she's supposed to be because he hasn't come back. Therefore, I think we still have a lot of growing to do and a lot of understanding and a lot of evolving. And I really wish the church would sometimes just say, like, hey, we need to do that. We don't have it all figured out. But I think where the church fails sometimes is we come to the table as if we have it all figured out, and that's where people get hurt. And so for me, I've found a church where I'm at that I can actually go to as I am, and I can be more than just a person in a seat. I can serve, I can lead. It's an affirming church, so that's been really helpful. But I've had to take a break from the church to say, like, I need time to heal in order to protect my love for the church. And that's come with self-awareness. That's come with just like my own, like, again, I don't know why I'm so defensive over the church. But it really has been. I want to love her so well. And because of that, I've had to not go for a little bit so that I can protect that.
I mean, you're a pastor for 10 years, so you would have a lot of Bible knowledge and theological knowledge, I would assume. How do you sort of reconcile your sexuality to those Bible verses that condemn homosexuality?
So for me, it's like, one, it's not as black and white. It's not black and white. It really isn't. You interviewed David Bennett, and that's how I even ever stumbled across you. And I read A War of Loves, and I think David Bennett is one of the most amazing human beings. And at the end of the day, he sits on a side that he sees it one very clear way, and I see it differently. But it doesn't mean that we aren't supposed to love one another. It doesn't mean that we aren't supposed to be in community with one another. It doesn't mean that we are not supposed to stop sharing and bringing the gospel to people. Like that doesn't make, and I think that's where I struggle in this, is like, it just, for some people that I have been in community with for a long time within the church have not been able to be in community with me anymore because of my decisions. And that's sad to me, because that's not it. Like, we can talk about the verses that speak to homosexuality, and let's say that it is black and white and it is wrong. Well, also the way that you're treating me is not the way that Jesus speaks of love, or is not the way that Jesus speaks of the church, or like, I struggle with that. So let's say I'm living a very wrong life right now. Aren't we all living a very wrong life if we're living it post-fall? Like, none of us have it figured out. So why is this one thing for me within where my context is? It's the one thing that we pull out and say, this is so broken and this is so wrong. And the day that I sat across from my executive pastor to say, hey, I still want to be on staff, but I am in a relationship and I want to honor you all because I know where you stand bylaws and I know where you stand theologically. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, is there a way I can stay on staff? And to be met with no. My hurt in that moment was, I need you to be invited into the fact that, like, I am coming to you. I am sharing the honesty of my life with you. You don't require that of anybody else to say, hey, last night I looked at porn, and for them to come into your office the next day and to share that with you. And for you to, like, need to know that, and for then you to decide if they're on staff or not. Like, that's really confusing for me. That's hard. That's challenging.
It's confusing even the way we look at sin, because, yeah, you can say, like, having sex outside of wedlock, or watching porn, or stealing from a shop, swearing, I don't know, getting drunk, like all these sort of external sort of behaviors that are condemned by the church. Or I don't even see that as sin. I see sin as a condition of the heart and a nature that is opposed to God. And I feel Jesus can only reveal that to us. So whenever we get into this sort of external behavior, condemnation towards people, it's just odd to me, because it just sort of deters people from really wanting to know who Jesus is.
Yes. Like, I totally agree, because we're working against ourselves in that moment. I'm like, what you're trying to communicate is, honestly, it's stripping the richness of Jesus. It's stripping the richness of the gospel. Because, yeah, I could go on a whole thing of, like, what I believe or what I think in that, but it does. I think it really does. I think you're right. It takes away from who Jesus is.
And C.S. Lewis talks a lot about he talks about fleshy sins and spiritual sins. And he says spiritual sins will mess you up more than any of these quote unquote fleshy sins, whatever they are. Quite often you can have someone who's, having sex outside of marriage and drinking and doing drugs or whatever, and they're often could be closer to the truth of God than someone who's serving in the church, but they're just prideful and self-righteous, and it's sort of like they worship their own sense of moral attainment as opposed to the literal God himself. It's almost like it reminds me of what Jesus says to the Pharisees, or I don't even know where he preached this. He's like, I will show those who think they see that they are blind, and those who are blind that they can see. And I'm just really seeing this play out in our culture quite often. Religious people, or people that go to church, they have a religious spirit to them instead of a Christ-like spirit. And I don't know where to even start to begin to make change there. Do you?
The easy answer, that's not easy, is for us to just be to genuinely live out the gospel, like to love them, to there's so many moments in the gospels where I feel like Jesus is sitting there with that same like frustration or same like, really? Like with the Pharisees, like, we're going to talk about that. Like, I just feel like there had to been moments where Jesus really would just wanted to punch someone, but he just refrained and chose not to, because he's like, we're going to focus on that right now. And sometimes I feel that same, like, that's the thing we're going to look at. Okay. And it just causes us to, they missed the gospel. Like, they missed it. It was right in front of them. He was like, they had the opportunity, they were speaking to the gospel and they missed it. And I feel like that's the same, like, issue today.
This just blows my mind when I think about that.
Yeah.
Look, Jesus, the scripture says this. Why aren't you? And it's like, he's right there in front of you.
He is right there in front of them.
Yeah, so interesting. So, I suppose I just want to sort of ask what a relationship with Jesus is like for you. How do you explain that to the secular person? Because it baffles me sometimes. I don't have a lot of Christian friends. Most of my Christian friends are sort of atheists and stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, I talked to God today, but I'm just interested. We must sound batshit crazy. Like,
absolutely.
But for you, like, to talk to God and grow into intimacy with Jesus, how do you explain that with more clarity?
I go back to being released into that wrestling match with God. And it's a very similar moment that happens in the Old Testament. And we can like literally try to view that wrestling match that happens in the Old Testament and see like, oh, like we can just hone in on the fact that like someone wrestled with God. But the beauty of that story is God never let go. We can try to let go all we want, but he does not let go of us. And so for me, it has been, I'm a feeler and I'm an emotionally wired human being, and I need to be loved. Like, I know all these things about myself to an unhealthy level at times. I understand that I can creep into all the unhealth of that. But for me, the thing that has sustained me in my journey is that he has not let go of me. There have been things that have failed me, that there have been things that have hurt me. There have been things, but God is the only thing that I can look back in any of my journey and say, he was always there. He was just always there. And because of that, he is the thing that I can trust. Because other people are hard to trust. And that's what's so funny to me I think what's so challenging to me is like, again, the church is supposed to exist, but we have these leaders and we have these preachers and we have these pastors who are human. And sometimes we can get so caught up in following them, and it causes us to miss following Jesus. It causes us to miss the thing that like literally has not let go of us. They're going to let us down at some point because they're human. And we just sometimes don't want to see it that way. But God has not let us down. He has not let go of me. He hasn't stopped loving me. He hasn't stopped pursuing me. Like, in the moments that I have wanted a break from him and I've literally said, like, I am mad at you, he just existed in that and was okay with that. So I don't know. I think we see that in the gospel too. I think Jesus like shows some emotions that we as human beings express and need to feel. And it almost makes it like, okay, and God is always okay with that. Like, God wants us to be honest with him. And I think Jesus paved the way to like show us that we're capable of doing that. We're capable of being honest with him.
Do you feel, because I was talking to a Christian the other day and she was same-sex attracted, and she was like, she felt all this guilt and like she felt guilt and shame when she was in a same-sex relationship, and then when she wasn't, she said she felt at peace. Like, I just want to ask you, do you?
No, And nobody, like, I now sound batshit crazy because I have never had, like, I want to get emotional about that because I have never had more peace in my life. And that's not to say that please hear me. My sexuality is not my identity. My sexuality is just a part of who I am. But I have never had more peace with my sexuality in the sense of the person who I'm with than now. I really haven't. I tried so hard to put it in a box. And I'm the one that I did all the right things. I was with a man and he was a good person. He's still a good person, but I caused so much chaos and conflict in that relationship because I was not able to be myself in all the ways that a relationship is supposed to exist, like all the emotional, the sexual, the physical, the like, and everything. I brought my own chaos into that relationship because I was just trying to do the right things. And on this side of things, I've had people say the same thing. Like I kissed a girl once and I was just there was so much chaos. I was like, okay, I literally have none of that. So that is the only thing I can say is like, for you, you're called to celibacy. For you, you're called to be in a straight relationship. For me, for whatever reason, I have peace within my same-sex relationship. Period.
I resonate with what you say about your sexuality is not your identity. Because I agree with that. I think we sort of live in a culture now where when someone's gay because they'll tell you about it. Like
absolutely.
But also there's on the flip side of that, it was sort of an identity given to us. As in, I don't care. Like, I talk about it, but it's like people seem to care. Like, oh, you can't be gay and Christian, or you can't be one with God and be in a lesbian relationship. So I'm just trying to elevate these conversations and understand people and be like, yeah, man, I have sex with women and I'm still in an intimate relationship with Jesus. I don't get the Bible. I don't get why the Bible condemns sexual immorality. Does that mean same-sex attraction? People seem to think, oh, it's very clear. But I guess how much of my experience is reliable? Do you know what I mean? Like we say we don't feel guilty or condemned, we're both in gay relationships, but is our faith, do we rely on our experience for our faith or the Bible?
The only thing I think like is because I trust the Spirit being inside me, just like he is with anyone else who chooses to believe in who he is. That doesn't mean that I'm not listening to the Bible. That doesn't mean that I'm not discrediting the Bible. I do think sometimes that means that I see the Bible differently than other people see it. But isn't that interpretation? Like,
the Bible's not up for interpretation, is it?
Aspects of it I feel like it's not black and white. I think there are some black and white elements, but then I think there's a whole mystery to the gospel that is for us to figure out with him.
It does say, I will send you the Spirit, and the Spirit will lead you into the truth.
And I think we have to be able to trust the Spirit inside of us. I feel like that's where so many people get caught up in following other people's words of what the Bible, it's their own interpretation. It's their own version of what the Bible says. Isn't that what we're all doing when we're listening to other people?
I mean, I think the crux of it is, lay your life down for your friends, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah. I think at the end, that's all that matters.
I mean, another argument I hear is, we say God says to love. He's a loving God. The counter argument is, but he also calls us for holiness.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, stop having sex outside of marriage. Stop. And it's just like, well, are you more holy than me? I don't know. Like, not you, the person who says it. Like, you're full of pride, my bro. Like,
absolutely. I think holiness is what we're called to.
Yeah.
But I also think holiness is something else that we've put in a box to say this is what it looks like. And again, your version of holiness of what you're being called to is different than what I'm being called to. I think holiness looks different on all of us. I don't think the calling is different for any of us, but I do think holiness over us, it looks different. Because isn't that us being his sons? And like, go back for a second. You just said, so something I think in the probably last year that I really am not at peace with is, I told you I've not had this moment where I felt like I needed to come out. I don't belong to the LGBTQ plus community because again, my identity has rested in being his daughter. Like my identity is so wrapped up in being his daughter that my sexuality is a part of who I am, but it's not my identity. And so I haven't felt the need for that. My learning in the last year is that the LGBTQ plus community exists. It's because of the church, which the church is the first person to look at that community and say, whoa, they're wrong. But the church has not made room for this community. And so what's going to happen, just like any other culture that has created itself or any other species that has created itself, it's because they didn't have a place to belong. So for same-sex attracted people or anybody else within that community, there's not a clear way in the church for them to belong. So what are they going to do? They're going to go create their own community. Is it sustainable? No, it's not sustainable. Is their identity wrapped up in the wrong thing? Absolutely. But they're just trying to belong. What if the church created space for these people to exist and to be and to belong? We wouldn't have this polarization. I fully believe that.
Wow, that's like, yeah, I mean, there's a few things in that. You said you don't feel at home in the LGBT community. That's because they've made gay the center.
They have. That's their identity. That's not my identity.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Your identity is Jesus.
Yes. It's being his.
But
it's following him.
A sense of community with other gay people because you're all sort of got this thing that
sort of 100%. Like yes, but I don't need that to belong. I can exist within that. I can be friends with that. I can love that. But I don't need that to belong. I need him to belong. I am dependent. Like talk about holiness. Like I cannot function without his understanding his purpose and understanding what he's called me to. That gives me life. That gives me reason. That gives me all of the motivation to continue to go. And then for me, it's just been these like I see Erin, she's my blessing in that. Like she is someone who I get to partner with in that. She's not my reason why. She didn't fix me. She didn't convert me. She did none of the things that we are so quick to. She just has been she's been the Erin in Exodus, and she's been able to hold my arms up. And I have deeply prayed for someone to hold my arms up when I couldn't. And she's that person. And she just so happens to be a female.
What do you think God's calling on your life is?
To love people. Period.
That's a clip in itself. Just 2 seconds.
Period. It's not that easy. I wrestle with that. I literally had the best job in the world. I loved being a full-time pastor. It came with flexibility. It came with being able to just all these things that I don't have anymore because of what I do now. But none of my purpose and none of what he's called me to do has stopped. He's called me to love people. He created me to love people. And so that just I get paid. I am being paid by someone else to do what he has called me to do, if that makes any sense at all.
Well, what do you do now?
I'm a medical assistant at a hospital.
Would you ever go back to pastoring if you could at like an affirming church?
If I could. I would need to not jump on that, and I would need to make sure that I am healthily in a space, because there's a lot of unhealth in that. Like, for me, so much of like, because I was so unhappy with who I was, because again, I was trying to do all the right things in order for happiness, or in order for joy. Let's go, like, happiness is fleeting. Let's go to joy. In order for joy to be present in my life, I was doing all the right things, but there was just, it wasn't there. And I think for me, I found so much validation in, like, I'm a pastor of a church, and there's a calling on my life, and I just got caught up in that. And I have been so stripped of that. Like, talk about humility. Like, I have been so stripped of all of those things that I once took pride in or once found value in. And so now it's just like, here I am, here I am, Lord, send me. Like, I'm still the same person that I was then. I don't get caught up in that. Like, none of that gives me value.
There's a pastor called Timothy Keller. He defines worship as something we derive our sense of self from, or our identity from. So it's funny that you say that, because even being a pastor, you can worship the fact that you're a pastor as opposed to the literal God himself. Isn't that such a crazy revelation?
It is sadly and unfortunately such a thing that most pastors struggle with. And yeah, that it's just a blind spot, unfortunately.
Even me, I'm trying to, people condemning me. Yeah. And I try to point as soon as I try to point the finger at someone else, I just feel the Holy Spirit convict me. And it reminds me of that verse, before you judge a speck in your brother's eye, take the log out of your own. And it's so like invigorating, if I'm going to use a big word here, to be like, oh my God, there's something worse that I'm doing. Oh yeah. Convict me, deliver me from that. Just take that off me. And then,
but that's holiness. That prayer right there is holiness. That is what holiness is. It's
holiness, I understand, is oneness with God, and that happens through sanctification. But yeah, before that is conviction, right?
Isn't it removing the things that keep us from him? Like,
oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting excited now.
Me too. I mean, but I think it's okay for us to say that looks different. Like, we can't put it in a box. We can't say that it looks the same for all of us. But
oh man, I'm nervous that people are going to think I'm all weird and saying all this stuff, because secular people don't understand this idea of conviction of sin.
Correct.
But it's such a positive experience to sort of know you're a sinner and then feel the deliverance from it, and then just turn away, repent, change your mind about it. Which sounds so religious to say all this, but I feel that experience happening within me. So again, yeah, when people are pointing the finger, it's just like, I'm on my own journey, man. Like, just let me be.
And community, like, has to be a part of it. Accountability is a beautiful part of it, but I don't know. I think that's just where sometimes we allow things to take too much of a seat in the wrong seat, and it causes us to hone in on or focus on maybe the wrong thing, or it just causes us to miss. I think about, like, all my friends who I was in community with, doing life with, who don't want to have anything to do with me on this side of things. And that's fine. Like, I'm in process of learning how to be at peace with that, but you're going to tell me that you're living out the gospel by, like, not being able to be in community with me, like, just because you disagree? Like, he still was in community with the Pharisees. Like, he still chose to show up for the Pharisees. He did not agree with them. I think at some points he, again, wanted to punch them in the face, but he made himself available to them. Where I have seen so many people, they're unavailable now. And it's like, okay.
It's such a shame. I'm always trying to find that line between, trying to treat people with kindness and compassion, but also assert that, hey, your belief is damaging. Or
I'm frustrated by this. Yes.
yes, but also like, hey, but I can still be loving and compassionate to you. But it's a fine line. I'm trying to learn it by replying to all the Instagram comments I get, sending me Bible verses, telling me I'm a sinner. I'm like, how do I love these people? But like, not that sort of burn, kill them with kindness kind of love, like just genuine compassion, instead of firing back at them. But it's so difficult because it's not natural for me.
It's not. And because there's hurt. I mean, we're still human. We still, like, there's still hurt in that. And there's still, when someone misses, like, the opportunity to understand me and they go straight into, Taylor, one, I haven't talked to you in 10 years. Taylor, you are communicating a false gospel. Like, what happened to first trying to understand? Like, why are we not sitting across from one another and you just being willing to take on the posture to understand and to learn instead of you coming at me so hot? I'm not coming at you hot. I don't feel the need to come at anybody hot. Like, so why can't we just like open ourselves and make ourselves available to sitting across from one another and being willing to understand? Again, that does not mean you have to agree with me, but you should be able to make yourself available to me. And it's really sad that people don't want to do that.
Yeah, totally. And I understand what you mean by people saying, yeah, you're preaching a false gospel. I mean, it's made me think of just a few questions to sort of finish up is like, what would you say the core of Christianity is to you?
Loving Jesus and loving others. Simply that. And no ifs, ands, or buts. Like actually living that out.
It might be similar to the one I just asked, but why are you a Christian?
Because he hasn't let go of me. He's been the one thing that like, he has been my why in all the moments that I don't understand. In all the moments that I have not been able to explain. Like he has just been understood. And that does not make sense. That sounds batshit crazy. But I feel like that is the beauty of, I totally believe that the Bible is like the way that we are supposed to live. But I think where I really struggle is when we remove the mystery again, because we are not living in the beginning and we are not living in he has not come back yet. He has not restored the brokenness. And so none of us understand it fully. We don't. There's not a single person who understands it fully. So why are we getting so caught up in trying to be right when we could just love, when we could just be, when we could just live with one another, when we could just exist and point people to him? I don't understand that.
I mean, my answer to that would be it's because it feels better to be right than it does to try and unconditionally love people or be generous or be kind.
Yeah.
Like winning arguments and being right feels amazing.
See, and I'm wired so differently because I don't like to argue. So I just like to exist. And that's where I then come in and say, why can't we just exist?
Well, maybe you've moved past that.
I don't know if I've moved past it or if it's just the way that like I have never been able. Yeah, it's not a part of me.
Oh man, no, I love being right. Oh my God.
I don't need to be right. I'm probably the first person to say I'm wrong. Yes, but I still think, but like, look at, you can come into the room and you can need to be right all day long. Like, let's completely switch the purpose of conversation and you walk into the room and you need to be right all day long. And I don't need to be right at all. We still can be in the same room and you can go about your way of needing to be right all day long, and that will stress me the heck out, but I can still be in the same room as you. I can still want to be friends with you. I can still want to understand you as a creation of God. Isn't that what it's supposed to be for all of us?
Well, that to me is, yeah, you're producing more spiritual fruit. You would be the one, because needing to be right is it's a sort of self-worship, sort of prideful quality. In my opinion, which I still have a lot of. and maybe I just need to do some more work.
But on the back end of that, I could say that my not needing to be right is insecurity, and I could thrive in needing to be the victim because of who I am. So let's completely switch the pendulum for a second. But yet the two of us can still be in the same room. I'm not greater than you. I'm not less than you. We can still be in the same room, and we can still love one another and love him. Like, let's figure out what that looks like.
How would you like to see like LGBT people come to know Christ given the current culture?
Give him a chance. You don't need to give Christians a chance. You don't need to give the church even a chance. I wish that wasn't the case. That breaks my heart that sometimes that's the case. But give Jesus a chance. And that means like understanding who he is on your own. Give him a chance. That's all I would say. Because he's not going to fail you, and he's going to be so much more than you think he is. Because he's not who you've been told he is.
Ooh, I love that. I think that's a beautiful place to end, Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience and some of your little nuggets of wisdom.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for being willing to have me. It means a lot.
It's all good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Of course.